I assume the Zoom's working. Hello, hello. All right, so Christine's out today, and we reserved this whole time to go over Cayuse training. So unless anybody has anything else, we're just gonna let Sarah take over and start the training. I can't. And Angela, Zoom set up, right? Yeah. Sweet.
Morning. I encourage you to maybe move forward. Some of the screenshots might be a little small, or once I'm in the system, it might be a little small, but you're also welcome to move forward if you have trouble seeing during the demo. So if we haven't met, I'm Sarah Higgins. I am shorter than the podium. I'm Sarah Higgins. I'm the Finance Director for the Center for Health, Work, and Environment here in the School of Public Health. I think I've met a lot of you, but I'm really horrible with names. So even if we have met in the past and I can't think of your name today, please don't take it personally. I'm just really horrible at names, and I'm willing to admit that and throw myself under the bus. You're gonna make me wear a microphone? No.
I mean, we can move that, but I'm not
it's okay.
sure.
It's okay, I'll wear a microphone.
If you want to put that somewhere.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I have nothing to clip it on, but I'll just hold it.
Just you can put it in your pocket.
I do have a pocket.
Yeah.
Fancy
Make
that.
sure the light is green. I saw it turn red. Just push the button in the front. There you go.
Okay.
Green.
Can everybody hear me? Yes. Okay. So if you have not been privy to any of the previous Cayuse demos, then thank you for being here today just to get a feel for this and see maybe how it might work in your position or in your units. So since every unit kind of operates differently, I'm just going to give a really general overview. If anybody has any detailed questions and we have time, we can go into that today. Otherwise, there will be future trainings, so please don't expect that you're going to learn anything today that you're going to just take back and just run with this and start using it today. First of all, so we are going to, let's see here. So in general, Cayuse is for grant post-award management. So anything once you get your money in the bank, but not only just grants, we can run projections on grants, which are your Fund 30s, 31s, so on and so forth, your contracts, as well as your non-grant accounts. So that's one thing that's been going around is, oh, this is only good for grant post-award. And that's not necessarily true. I have been playing around with some Fund 10s and 20s, and we can pull in revenue and you can set up budgets. You can wipe those budgets at the end of the year, just the way that our Fund 10s and 11s work. And so you can use this for all of your accounts that you want to use it for. It's for running spending scenarios, including new hires, terminations, salary or FTE changes, and non-personnel expenses. So not only can you run projections based on what you think might happen with your personnel in your unit, but if you say, I need to set aside $10,000 out of this account because I need it for travel this year, you can go ahead and encumber that so that you remember that you wanted to do that and put a note in saying, Dr. So-and-so told me he needs $10,000 for travel. You can you can hire a fake person if you want to see we need to hire a new PRA and I think they're going to come in at 40,000 plus benefits. What might that look like across my accounts? So we'll get into some of those details, but this is just kind of a quick list of the things that you can do. And then you can also manage more detailed budgets with full end user control. So as you know, when OGC sets up your budgets, if your grant was originally routed or came in with a specific budget of $50,000 in payroll and $20,000 in salary, and then a smattering of other, then pretty much everything else goes into other, right? 460,000, whatever it is. You can actually go into this system and you can say, well, I don't want 50,000 just under personnel. I want to take 25,000 of that and put it under faculty salaries, and I want to take 25,000 of that and put it under staff salaries. You can actually do that in the system so that as you're going along throughout the year or the years, you can see, wow, I'm way overspending on faculty salaries, but I'm way under on staff. What went different here? Or I'm under on PRAs. My benefits went wonky. As we all know, our routing budgets for benefits are not at all what really happens. And so, for example, one of the scenarios in my unit, we've been tracking the routed budget benefits versus the actual budget or the actual benefits. And what we found on like one specific R01 is at the end of 5 years, this PI would have been $25,000 short in benefits. $25,000 is a pretty good chunk when you're talking, you know, that's 10% of your budget that's off for just the benefits differences because of the people that were actually on there and their actual benefits rates. So this will allow you to set up a person with their actual benefits rates as close as you want within 2 decimal places. So if you know your person is 33.27%, you can set them up for your projections to run at 33.27% rather than the 25.04 that you had to route it at, or so on. So that's just kind of a quick, few scenarios that you might run into. What it's not for, so things that will not change regardless of this Cayuse software, your pre-award, everything will still be done in InfoEd. Cayuse does have a pre-award module that actually works system to system, just like our InfoEd does, but we did not purchase that module because OGC requires us to use InfoEd. So that will remain, and we do not have the pre-award module. Your actual personnel entries, so if for actual funding distributions, for hires, for payroll changes, for all the actual things that you need to happen with your personnel, all of that still happens in HCM. You can use this to run scenarios and decide what you want to do, but then you need to do the final entries still in HCM. Your effort reporting, so this does have a module for effort reporting, which is just like our ePERS. Again, OGC requires us to use our ePERS system, and so that will remain. You may see references to things in here called effort reporting, and basically we just kind of ignore all those pieces, the behind the scenes pieces on effort reporting. And then the official UCD record is still MFIN. So when we have to file reports with sponsors and that type of thing, our actual official record will still be MFIN. So this is really just a tool for those of us who manage grants or non-grants to be able to just do projections and run scenarios and all of that. So what we have right now is a sandbox. So this is our testing environment. We do have a live environment. I'm not necessarily sharing that website yet because it's not, I'm waiting for them to push some of the final pieces that they've been working on out to the live environment. Right now, the sandbox environment is the most current version that they've pushed out to us. That includes the projection module. So the live environment does have the projection module, but it doesn't necessarily work in the same way right now. So if you want to go out and start looking at what this is going to look like and start playing around, you're welcome to go to the Sandbox website. If you've already had a Cayuse login because you've been in one of our testing groups, or you've just contacted me and gotten a login, your login will work exactly the same. Your login and password are the same at the Sandbox. If you don't have one and you want to play in the next month or two, send me an email. My email address is up there, sarah.higgins. And I can set you up a login. It takes me about 15 seconds. So just send me an email and I will send you back your login and password, and you're welcome to go play at the site. The only thing that I ask, did I put it on here? I guess not. The only thing I ask is when we get into the system, you'll see today that I have a bunch of speed types that are 1-630, whatever the speed type is. Please don't mess with the ones that start with 1- because those are my testing accounts. So please don't play with those. You can go play with any of your accounts that are in the system. You cannot mess anything up, trust me. You can try to delete the account, you can add fake personnel. You can just go make a mess out of things and have fun playing. Just please ignore the 1-630 or 1-610, 1- anything, just ignore those. If you're not interested in playing in the Sandbox right now, or you just think that you won't have time in the next 1 to 2 months, then everybody who wants to have a user login, which probably is, the bulk of the PIs, the bulk of the staff, even probably some PRAs who do some of the financial stuff for our PIs, will be set up with a login. So don't worry just because you aren't set up in the Sandbox that you won't get an actual login to the system. Everybody will be able to get one of those. All right, so I want to show you what the actual system looks like. All right, so when you go to log into the testing site, this is actually the sandbox right here. So when you go to log in, you'll get your username. Yours will actually be first name dot last name. Mine was set up as one of the first 2 users, and so we later changed it to first name dot last name. And then you'll get a password from me, which you can go in and reset your password at any time. And if you forget your password, you can contact me and I can reset that for you. So when you log in, you're not going to see this screen. This screen is actually here because we have the grant module live on my login, and it's not supposed to be, and so they're fixing that. When you log in, you probably will have a blank page. All of these 4 things will be blank, and you'll have this menu right up here. And it probably only has a couple items on this menu. I just want to, as I mentioned before, the grants module we don't have. So even if you click on it, it's really not going to help you at all. We don't have the effort module. And so those really should not be there for you. If they are, don't use them, or use them in the test site, but they won't do anything for you. We won't have them in the live site. What we will have is personnel, financial, imports, and codes. You also may not have the import piece. So let me walk through what a couple of these look like. My slideshow is super huge because I'm actually using it to develop the user guides. And I don't want to go into all the weeds of all of that stuff today. This is really more an overview for you to just to understand how you might use this. So first of all, if you go under codes, this is what you'll find. And this is basically how the behind the scenes stuff works. So there's very few things that you actually might use in this module. One of them is accounts. So this very first one at the top left is probably the one you're going to use most often. And so that's to set up a new speed type. You can set up a real speed type. If you just got an email from OGC yesterday saying you have or even from finance, if you're getting a new 20 or anything like that, if you get something that says you have a new speed type on your new RO1, then you can go in here and you can go ahead and set that up. You can use the same title. You can use the same, it should be the same speed type. You should use the same org. It doesn't have to be the exact same title word for word because as we know, OGC is very limited on their on how many letters they can put in the title, and they try to get whether it's SNAP and expanded authority and all of that kind of stuff in there. If that's something that you don't really care about and you want to call it Dr. So-and-so's beryllium grant, I used to do beryllium stuff, that's just the top of my head, you can call it that. If there's something a little bit more descriptive, you can call it that. So this is totally up to you because you're going to be the one reviewing these. I'm probably not going to go into your account and say, it doesn't make sense that in MFIN it's called SERO1 beryllium when you've called it something else. So that's totally up to you. And I just want to show you how quick it is to be able to set up a new account. So when we go into account, these are the ones, see the 1 dash, so if you can ignore those, but you can see we've got 74 pages of accounts in here. So we'll just, what we'll do is we'll go up here and say add a new account. And basically we're just going to type in some very basic information. We're going to call this Sarah's demo account. Some of these drop downs just only have one value. Here you're going to choose grants or hard money. Grants are Fund 30s, hard money is everything else. And then an object set is always University of Colorado. Everything has to be put in University of Colorado or you won't be able to see it. I'm trying to get them to eliminate none and have these so we don't even have to choose them. So there will be some upgraded features coming soon. And then you just hit create and it takes you to this more detailed information. This is optional. It would be great to have in here, and it's great if you're going to use this account for projections. You really want to put some of this information in here. You probably want a start date and an end date, unless, let's say, it's a Fund 20. It's never going to have a start date and an end date, right? It might have a start date, but it's probably never going to have an end date. You probably want to tie it to your org so that if you're running reports, you can run your reports by org and be able to see just your information. So you're going to want to put that in there. You can choose from the drop-down box, and this works exactly the same as the finance office org. So if I choose centers and departments, and then I go down to my center, and then I choose, this one is, I'm going to call it a grant, and so it's 21550. Well, welcome to, okay. Some of the rest of this is super optional. So you can choose an indirect object code, and they're in here for you, so you can look and say, oh, well, this is research on campus, and it is modified total direct costs, and it's 55.5%. This is a grant, so it's not going to have any revenue information. And then the one key thing, so if you write down anything today because you want to go play today and you're going to set up an account today, this has to be none. I'm trying to get them to eliminate university and grant. Please know it has to be none. It's a behind the scenes glitch that if it's not none, it will mess up your projections. So that's really all you have to enter in here, and you hit save. Well, my computer, that's being an issue. So that right there created an account. If I went into codes again and I went through that whole list of accounts, this one would be there. However, if you're logging in and you just want to go check your financials, nothing has happened on this account. So just like an MFIN, OGC sets up your account, but if you went to run a report summary, nothing is there because nothing has happened. So if you go and add this to your home page, because we can narrow down whatever accounts you see. So if Peter, if you have 10 accounts that you monitor and are your responsibility, we can go into your personnel and we can set up so you only see those 10 accounts. You do not have to scroll through 74 pages of accounts in order to find your particular accounts. This is going to be especially helpful for PIs who maybe don't want to go in and play. They just want to go in and check their balance or their encumbrances, or maybe just kind of drill down and see a specific charge and say, I don't understand why I had $476 of travel. They can drill down and see that. But we definitely don't want anybody having to go through, scrolling through 74 pages. So once any activity exists on this account, then it will be there in your financials. I'm just going to go back to the home page here. So that's essentially the quick overview on codes. This is where you also set benefits. I am not going to get into the weeds on benefits because it gets extremely kind of complicated. It's a two-part entry. So we have to set up a benefits code and then tie a percentage to it. But the good thing is that any user who's going to be doing this and want access to be able to update benefits rates, you can do that. What we have not figured out, and I'm still working with Cayuse right now, is whether we will title those based on the person or whether we'll title them based on the percentage. So in other words, if my benefits rate is 33%, are we going to call that Higgins benefits, or are we going to call that 33% benefits? Because, and the reason it's kind of complicated is just because if, let's say come January, my benefits rate changed to 35%, then somebody goes in and changes 33 to 35 because their person changed from 33 to 35, then it's going to mess up my account. So don't start panicking about any of that kind of stuff. You will have full control over the benefits pieces that you need. And that's the really great thing, is that you can, up to 2 decimal places, choose any benefits rate. And what you'll have is a drop down. So when you go to set up, if you hire me as a new employee and you put in Sarah Higgins, you can make a guess because you don't know my benefits rate. I haven't been here before. And so you say, well, I think she's going to be at 30%. And then my first month of payroll hits and you say, wow, she's at 33. I'm just going to go fix it to 33. And then 6 months later, you check it and you say, wow, she actually is now at 35. You can change it to 35. And so your projections can be updated as often as you want based on new benefits rates. Especially important if somebody's changing FTEs, right? Because if you change your FTE from 1 FTE to 0.8 FTE, their benefits rate increases because their percent of benefits is higher than it was at 1. So anytime you're changing somebody's salary, you're probably changing their benefit rate with it, and you get full access to control that in this system. I keep timing out. Let me go back to this real quick. I know that I talk fast. I know that I ramble. Let me take a quick break and say, see if there's any definitely non-detailed questions, but just kind of overview questions or questions about the things that we've gone through so far. Okay, I'm assuming that's a good sign and that you're not all sleeping under the table or whatever. Okay. So let's see. We talked about codes. So this is the codes module. And like I said, so this is basically to set up your speed types and your benefits rates. I want to talk just real quickly about cost centers. Again, I don't want to get too into the details here because this is kind of an advanced user piece, but one that has been, as you may know, Cayuse has been using this system for several years. So if you've heard from Sarah Trimmer at all, you'll know that she's a huge supporter of cost centers. I somewhat use cost centers, but I do it a little bit differently because I haven't had Cayuse. And so I'm guessing that anybody who has accounts like I do, then you probably have set it up the same way I do, which is if you have a big grant that has multiple components. So if you have like, I have a T42 and a U19, if you have like a P30 or any of those kind of things, then you have multiple components. You probably have like an admin core and a clinical core, maybe not a clinical core over here, but and a research project and an outreach core and any of those kind of things. So what you may have done and what I always do is I set up multiple speed types. So I have my T42 has 10 or 11 speed types per year. My U19 has 5 or 6 speed types per year. So that's a great way to work things in MFin. You can do that and it will still work in Cayuse. However, the alternative once we have Cayuse is that you can set up what's called cost centers. And so you can set up one speed type and then you can break things out into cost centers. So you can actually call it P30 admin core. And then all of your expenses and your budget for that admin core go in there. And then you can set up your clinical core and then your budget and all your expenses for your clinical core go in that piece. The advantage to doing it that way is in MFin, if I have 10 speed types, I have to run operating summaries and details and all of that for 10 speed types. And then I have to put it all into a spreadsheet. And then I have to determine which one is overspent and underspent. And then I have to request a budget transfer. And it gets pretty complicated as to where then in Cayuse, you could actually just run one report and you could see the whole thing. Or you could just see the breakdown. You can actually run reports by cost center. So if you say, I just want to see my admin core, you can log in and see just your admin core, or you can see the admin and the clinical and the research and the outreach and all of that rolled up into one number. So you can say, even though my admin core is overspent, my clinical core is under, and that's okay because this sponsor allows rebudgeting. So I would not suggest setting up cost centers in your first 5 minutes in the system. Let's get a little bit used to it, but just kind of keep in mind in the back of your head that that's a possibility that you can definitely use down the road. Another example, not grant related. So if you, one example I gave Christine Gillen. So let's say that she has the Dean's slush fund. We don't use the word slush fund, but let's just say that he has an account called Dean's slush fund. And it's got $3 million in it. And he says, I want to give Dr. Lee Newman $1 million to spend over the next 5 years. He can use it however he wants for personnel and whatever over the next 5 years. She could actually set up a cost center called Lee Newman Slush Fund from the Dean with $1 million budget in it and have that as a cost center tied to her Dean Slush Fund account. That basically sets aside that $1 million. The Dean can still log in and see how much is in his entire $3 million slush fund, but he can see that 1 million of that was set aside for Dr. Lee Newman and how much of that has Lee Newman spent. On the other hand, we can set it up that Lee Newman cannot see the Dean's $3 million. Lee Newman can only see his $1 million. So that's really good if you're making commitments, even within departments. If you have several, startup packages, you've recruited some new faculty and you've got startup packages, or let's say you're setting things aside for you need to do a renovation or buy a big piece of equipment, you could budget that and set that aside in your Fund 72s or wherever you need to set that aside. So you have a lot more flexibility and control over your accounts in Cayuse than you do in MFin. There's no way that you're going to call the finance office and say, please set aside $1 million in an account called Lee Newman, but I don't actually want you to move the money in there and all of that. This gives you control to do all of that. All right, any questions on cost centers? I know that was a kind of a quick, okay. The other module I'm going to talk about is imports, and this will be really quick because essentially very few people should need to do imports. So this is not something that you should have to worry about on a day-by-day basis. Our plan is to have 2 project managers own Cayuse, and that will include the monthly actual imports. So I will be one of those project managers. The other one is TBD. So if you're getting super excited about this project and you want to be one of the other project managers and you think that your supervisor would support that, there will be a call put out for that. So just stay tuned probably in the next week or so once Christine is back and we can work on that. So we will have some funding availability for another project manager. So the only thing is that the project managers are going to be responsible for the monthly upload of all actuals in Fund 10s, 20s, 70s, 80s, and the budget and actuals into Fund 30s. That will all be done at a school level. So we'll use the school level org node so that every account that is set up under the school will be pulled in those 4 or 5 imports. However, if you have accounts that are outside of the School of Public Health, then you probably will be responsible for those imports. It's actually very simple to do. So something that I'm willing to sit down with anybody who has accounts outside the School of outside the School of Public Health. If that's a standard one and you have one and that's it for the rest of your life and we want to add it to our import, we can talk about that. I mean, we're not going to just be hard, like this is it. But that's something that you'll have control over whether you import that. You'll just need to keep up on the imports to make sure that you know where you're at. So that is the import piece. Getting into some of the actual information here. Let me go back to the all right, so that's what I wanted to get through, the behind the scenes stuff, and now we get to the fun stuff. So I want to show you what it's actually like to go in and put in personnel, do some funding changes, set up their funding distribution, look at some financial reports, and all the fun stuff. So let's start with personnel. Everybody who is employed in the School of Public Health when we launch this live will be in one single upload that we've asked Cayuse to do. So at this particular moment, if you go into the sandbox, you'll see all employees who were here when we did the initial upload about a year ago. So if you or a person that you in your unit has been hired in the last year, they're probably not in here. You're welcome to go in and set them up if you want to play with their information. People who have terminated are still within the last year are still in here. We haven't gone in and cleaned this up. This is just our play environment. So you can use these little arrow keys in order to sort. So right now, when the default is that everybody is in order by their employee ID number. That's always our person identifier. It needs to be the employee ID number. You can use this column, so ignore the first line, that was my playing. You can use this to sort by the last name. So you can see when I do that, it goes top to bottom by last name. You can use this to sort by email, which seems useless except for that because of the way our emails work, it actually ends up sorting by first name. A lot of people don't have emails in here, so let me get to another. So you can see this ends up sorting by first name. Additionally, if you don't want, if you know exactly who you're looking for, Debashis has been very nice in letting me use his information. I will tell you that all the payroll information in here is fake, so for the demo that I'm doing today, so don't freak out when you see that people are making ridiculous amounts of money. So I've searched for him. You can search by first name, last name, email address, a portion of it. Okay, so if I just searched for Ghosh, you'd see that there's actually 2. This was a play environment testing out a stipend, so ignore the S. All right, so this is when I get into a person that already exists in the system. If I want to set up a new person, let me show you how quickly that actually works. So let's say that you want to just test and find out whether you can afford a new PRA. So we're going to name them 00099, or yep, 999000. You could call this, let's see. It should be a 6-digit number, but we're just testing. And we'll call them, actually, call them TBN PRA. And we will not give them an email address or a phone number right now. Okay, so that person exists. If I wanted to change anything, I can always go in here and change something. The fields on the left here, most of these, seems like a lot of work to enter everything, and I will tell you that we really don't even need to use most of these. You can put in demographics if you want to be able to easily access somebody's birth date, area of interest. Area of interest is really interesting later. Once we start using that, we could sort by things like, I'm interested in beryllium. Who else is interested in beryllium? And we could put some keywords in there so that PIs can actually search for other PIs who are maybe working in the same areas. We can put degrees, we can put what key personnel group they're in, but really this is not a required tab. Totally optional and pretty easy to skip. You can link web documents and database documents in here. So this would be a place if we wanted to store their bio sketches or CVs, we could do that. Contact information, again, if you want to just be able to run a report for contact information for your unit, probably don't need to do that. You can do that in HCM. Maybe you don't have HCM access, and so this is the way for your unit to be able to give access to that kind of information to the people who actually need that. Keeping in mind that we can limit access to anything for anybody. So if we say we only want, we have a PRA who tracks our finances, but we don't want them to know anything about payroll, we can completely lock payroll out and just give them access to the other expenses, that kind of thing. So we can narrow this down. You can only see your unit. You can only see these 10 people. You can only see yourself. We can narrow it down however we need to. Title, so if you want to track, this person used to be an instructor, now they're an assistant professor, now they're an associate professor, we've got to track 7 years up and out, that kind of thing, you're welcome to put it in here. Again, it's in HCM, but if you want to use it for your tracking, you're welcome to. Just to jump down, we're not using effort. This is the effort certification. So don't use this tab. As we talked about, we're not doing effort certification. So the two key pieces in this particular section are salary and then software user. This person does not, it basically says this person is not a software user right now. Do I want them to be one? And if so, then I can, well, yeah, they have to have an email address, so it's not going to let me set them up. But this is where I can give them access and say, I only want them to see these 3 accounts, but not any payroll. And that's where I can do that. All right, so if we go into salary, this is where we're going to play for a few minutes. So we're going to say add a salary. Corporation is always UCD, that's the only option. This is number 1. Everything is always number 1, just like in HCM, everything is always 0 until you do another line, and then that line is line 1. So in this particular case, Cayuse does not use position numbers like we do. So if we have 2 positions in HCM, we have the same employee ID, which is the same situation here, but we have 2 position numbers. In this particular case, we have entry number 1 and entry number 2. So I went in and I set up Devashis and I said, line number 1 is his faculty salary, so let's say $200,000, and then line number 2 is his chair stipend, and so let's say that's $25,000. And then you can do funding distributions separately on those, so you're not trying to work backwards into this whole piece of what percent of his entire salary. So in this case, we're going to call it number 1, and we're going to say that he is hired on 2/1/20, and he doesn't have an end date because we're just testing this out and seeing how it's going to work. And in this case, we wanted to hire a PRA at $40,000. We leave approved salary empty. It does not do anything. We need to choose what org he's in so that we can make sure that they are included on all of our reports. So I will put him in my unit. Oops, sorry, wrong one. All right, hours worked per week. unnecessary, best to leave empty. Benefits package. So this is where you're going to see kind of a chaos for now in the play world. In the real world, this will be organized and you'll be able to choose the benefits rate that you need. And if the benefits rate that you need is not in there, then either I can set it up, or if you have access to do that, then you can set it up, or somebody in your unit can set that up. In this case, we're going to say that this person is going to make 24.92% benefits, so I'm going to choose that one. That stays blank. You could put a comment in, testing to see how this works. There's no step type. That'll be if we decide to set up steps where we want everything to automatically escalate at 3%, we can do that. It's not set up that way right now in order to give every unit maximum control over setting up their future raises. And then we choose a pay period type. So same as in HCM, we're choosing biweekly, hourly, or monthly. This is a PRA, so they're going to be monthly and they're going to be salary. We have the option of things like 4 months and 9 months and 10 months and those kind of things that we don't really do here on this campus. If you have a reason to use those, you can use those. Probably what we're going to be choosing is either salary or hourly. In this case, they're salary. And create. So I realized that took a few minutes because I was talking through it, but imagine if you were just plugging through and you already knew the information, that would have taken you probably 30 seconds or less. So now that line exists. What you can do is if you wanted to see how it's going to work over a 5-year grant, you could just go ahead and add another line and with a new start date and say I want this to be 7/1/2021. Oh, 2020, because they need a raise by July, right? No end date. And then they're going to make $42,000 the next year. And the one thing I hate is these drop-down boxes. I'm really trying to get them to let us type in the org. So be patient with me on that one. Totally just chose the wrong one. All right, benefits package. I think that they're going to have the same benefits in the next year. And they're still going to be monthly and they're still going to be salary and create. Nope, forgot that one. So the nice thing is it highlights in red what you've missed, so you don't have to go hunting. All right, so now I've got 2 lines, and actually come to think of it, this one doesn't have an end date, but I know it needs to end, right, because I entered the next row. So this little button right here allows us to edit, making sure how big that is there. And now you say, well, now I know that that's going to end on 6/30/2020 because I've already entered his next row, and then I don't have to do anything else. I can just save. So now I've got his salary for February through June and July through forever. I could add 50 rows if I really wanted to get creative about it. If somebody gets a mid-year raise, you can go add another row, even that's backdated in between some of the rows you've already entered. You can always go in and change dates. If you say, they were supposed to get a raise on July 1, but it turns out we're going to do a promotion on August 1st, and so July is going to be the same pay. You can go and fix all of that. You can also, this little button right here copies a row. So basically what it's going to do is take the exact same information from the previous row, and then it's just going to give you an opportunity to do a new start date and end date. And then if you say, wow, I really didn't mean to enter stuff for July 2020, they're terminating, I'm just going to go ahead and delete that row. It's just that easy. Keep in mind, it's just that easy. So you hit the delete button and you didn't actually mean to delete. There is no Control-Z, you're re-entering a row. So just be careful with the X because it actually works. All right, so the big question, funding distribution. So now I can click on anything that's blue in the system. So you can see this is blue, I can click on it. And this is where I'm going to enter the funding distribution for that period. So I'm looking for February through June. The salary is $40,000. And now I'm going to add a distribution. So I'm going to say that for those 4 months, and then I'm just going to choose a speed type. I can start typing if I have one in mind that I want to use. I probably won't use Lisa's test account. We'll use Sarah's demo account. I just choose it. Again, if you've set up cost centers, we've played with a few. So if I set up cost centers and I want to put them on my admin core, then I can do that. Otherwise, I can just leave that blank. Object code. So this is where their encumbrance is going to go when you do their projection. So if this is I'm not even going to try to guess with the PRA. I'm just going to assume 400, 500 here. Oh, that was good. All right, so it is 400, 500. Not a cost share. My rate. All right, so right now, the projection pulls from the rate, not the percent. I have complained and complained, and they've heard my complaint. And within a couple months, what we're going to have is you can fill in either the rate or the percentage, and it will fill in the opposite value for you. So if you say, I know that I budgeted them for 10%, I want them on 10% no matter what it costs me, then you can put 10% and it will put in the rate for you. If you say, because how often do we get this? Another unit says, I have $4,500 to cover them for the next 3 months. And you have to figure out $4,500 is 2.37% of Dr. So-and-so, right? Then you could fill in the rate here of $4,500 and it will figure out what percentage it is for that salary. You can shoot, so let's see. Of this person's 45, what did I hired him at 40,000, right? So I'm gonna put him for 50% on this particular grant, and I'm not gonna put in the percentage because it actually doesn't do anything right now. That is it. Let's see, position type, nothing, okay. Oh, sorry, on cost center, you have to choose none. Trying to get rid of that as well. All right, so now I have a row showing $20,000. Obviously, I do not have this person funded, so I need to go in and figure out where the rest of them is going to come from. So realistically, this is probably the most time-consuming piece, but keeping in mind that once you get all these rows entered, if you just want to go change the dollar amount, that row is already there. If you want to just change the date, the row is already there. So if you set them up and you said, I want to pay them $20,000, and then you say, oh, well, gosh, my grant is ending. Let me see what happens if I'm just going to pay them $15,000. You can just take the existing row, go back in, change it to 15,000, and then run your projections again. So it does take a little bit to get this set up, but once you do, it is definitely helpful. So let's choose another one. We'll just go ahead and pay them on this Michigan thing here. None. Object code, I know it's 400, 500. I am going to make a cheat sheet on object codes for payroll, so you don't have to constantly look those up or make a guess. And I'm going to pay them the other 20,000 and create. Okay, so this person's funding distribution for this period has been entered, and if, like I said, if I want to go in and change it, I can hit the little edit button and I can go change what I want to. I can delete a row and say, nope, I put in the wrong speed type. Well, you can go fix a speed type, or you can say, nope, I didn't want that row at all. They should totally come off of that. It was just a placeholder. You can also put in, like I said, if you're making a fake account. So if you set up I think I might get it grant, I've got a 75% chance that this grant is going to come in. You can go set up a dummy grant called, I think this RO1 is going to come in for Dr. So-and-so, and put them into this funding distribution for this person and say, well, if they get the grant, can they then afford the PRA? So you could run that kind of a scenario. So right now we've got funding distribution in for this person. You can actually use the back button here, which is crazy that it allows that, but it totally does, and it does not mess anything up. If at this point I wanted to add another salary, I could. If I wanted to change the funding distribution, I could. Whatever I wanted to do for this particular person, I can. If I think this is good, I want to pay them 20,000 and 20,000, they're covered. It does not exist yet. We should have it probably in about a month. Maybe 2 months. We're getting custom reporting. So right now our reporting is a little wonky. What we would be able to do right here, and probably the #1 reason why I am in love with Cayuse, is from this screen right here, I could hit report, and there will be a list of reports right here that are not here right now. First of all, we'll be able to fully customized reports. So this is not like MFIN where we go in and we say, I need an operating summary, and no matter what, my operating summary is going to look like this. We can choose what fields we want on the report. So that's fantastic. The report that will be here, or as a possibility, is one that shows funding distribution out as far as you want it to go. So if you want to see this TBN PRA and you want to see what's going to happen in 3 years, you could run that funding distribution. Your report's going to be like really long because it shows every month, but it's going to show they're 100, 100, 100, 100, 70, 60, 40. They totally fell off. And if I don't get a new grant, I'm going to have to let this person go. So that's one of the fantastic things is that, you know, right now, you know, how long does it take from the time you apply for a grant to the time that you potentially get that grant? And that's assuming you get the grant, right? It's hard times for funding. So it's what, 6 to 10 months usually, sometimes more, especially if you have to resubmit. So we've got PIs who are applying for this funding. Even if they're going to get it, it's not until a year from now. But in the meantime, they don't have any way to pay their PRA. What are they doing? Or their postdoc or themselves. So this just at least gives more time, and then you can run scenarios and say, well, you know what, you've got this extra, you could pick up a class for teaching, and if you're able to get another class for teaching, then that'll cover 15% of you. 15% of you, let's drop that down, let's put it in as a PRA. 15% of a PI pays probably 40% of a PRA. So let's adjust, and then let's see where our grant lands and whether we can afford to keep our PRA. So you could run for multiple people. If you want to run your whole unit month by month and see where your shortfalls are, you can do that. So the projection piece, nope, get out of there. Any questions on the personnel piece or funding distribution? You guys are a really easy group. Come on, be complicated.
So when you're building a rate out, you have to calculate benefits rate and salary into that rate line, or can you plug in benefits rate somewhere else?
So the benefits rate is tied to the person, or I'm sorry, it's tied to this actual line right here, where I'm putting in the benefits package. So if I'm building out a rate and this is for February through June, but I know that their benefits is going to change in July, I'm entering another row just like we just did for July through next June, and I'm going to choose a different benefits package. When I'm doing their funding distribution, I don't even care about benefits because I've already set what their benefits rate is. So I'm only building in the salary dollar amount, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So if somebody says I have $4,500 to pay your person, but they mean total, not salary, they mean literally I will hand you $4,500 and that's what you get, you'll have to back out the piece. The easy thing is you can go into this right here and see, oh, they're at 35.2. I can just back that out. Now here's what I have in the salary piece, and then enter that reduced number in the salary piece. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yep, thank you.
I also just want to mention really quick, because I know it's kind of complicated in all of our lives when somebody is not one FTE. And so this system actually does not care about FTE. It just cares about total salary. So that's really kind of a mind shift. And it actually talks about annual salary. If somebody is 0.8 FTE, let's say they make $100,000 at 1 FTE and they make $80,000 at 0.8 FTE, there's nowhere in the system to tell it that it's 0.8 FTE. So what you're entering for their salary line is $80,000. If they change their FTE, you're entering a new salary row. Let's say they went to 0.9 FTE, you're entering a new salary row for that time period at $90,000. Does that make sense? So then when you're tallying up their total, their percentage breakdown for their funding distribution, it's the percentage of their actual pay, not the percentage of their pay times the FTE and all of that kind of stuff. It's just, this is how much they're gonna get paid this year for working, whatever they work, and then that's the total that we need to cover. All right. So if we go over to the financial module, and this is the last module that I'm going to show you, but it includes kind of 2 pieces. I want to go back to my little slideshow here for 1 second. You'll see I am writing out all these instructions. So those of you that are scribbling notes like mad, you will get all of these at some point. It is just not quite ready. So salary entries, funding distribution. Okay. So the financial module. So this actually includes two pieces. This is the financial module, which is anything relating to accounts. So this lets you see yours, basically like what we call your operating summary. You can drill down and see your detail. You can move your budgets around. You can enter encumbrances, any of that kind of stuff. Let's see. And then it includes the projection module. And so that is basically for, projections is for personnel, really. And so what that does is pull in what you have over in your funding distribution, or however you edit it, and I'll show you how to do that, for you to run scenarios based on what you know, your availability of funds for new hires, your whatever you're trying to find out, your impact on grants. Like, I mean, we've talked a lot about grants accounts, but you could use this for your teaching accounts. Let's say that you have a budget of $100,000 for your teaching this year, and you've determined that these 6 people are going to cover that teaching, and so gets this percent, and so gets this percent. First of all, I probably, if I had one teaching account, being a center, I don't have to worry about that too much, but if I had one teaching account, I probably would set up cost centers. Just to be able to tally and see that, you know, this is what I've promised Dr. So-and-so, or this is what I've got budgeted for this class. I mean, it just kind of depends on how you want to see your reports for your unit. Nothing is set in stone. You can do it as you are right now, or if you've got 1 or 2 teaching accounts, maybe you have a fall and a spring and a summer, you can do that. So you can still use this for projections. And so you say, well, Dr. So-and-so was going to teach this and they make $75,000. And they were going to get 15% of their salary covered, but it turns out that Dr. So-and-so is now over leveraged and they need to work on this grant. And so I need this other PI to work to teach this instead, and they make $100,000. And so we're still covering 15% because that's what we've promised, but now it's 15% of 100,000 versus 15% of 75,000. Those numbers are round, but as you know, real life isn't round. And so you could see, you know, the effect on your account based on that, as well as they probably have different benefits rates. And so a percentage of $100,000 salary or a $200,000 salary is a lot different than a percentage of a $30,000 salary, right? So those are some of the scenarios that you can do. Let me see. All right, so let's go back into the live system here. So when I said earlier, when you click on financials, you probably will have a shorter list. If you need all the financials because you work in the dean's office or whatever, you can definitely have that. As we know, all of our financials are public anyway. I can go into any of your accounts in MFin. I probably don't want to, I probably don't care, but if you needed to see an account, let's say your person is being paid on some other account and you want to see that that's there, you can do that. So right here, as far as the financial side, not getting into the projections just yet, but as far as the financial side, here's one of my testing accounts. So let's say that I want to look at this account right here, and this is a Michigan Stats account. The budget has been pulled in from MFin because it's a Fund 30. So all of your Fund 30 budgets will actually be pulled in. Your Fund 10s and 20s will need to be manually set up by you, and that's a super simple process. So we'll get into that at another training. So I can quickly, if I'm a PI and these are all my accounts right here, I can quickly log in and see, wow, I have $99 million budget at the moment, mostly because I really generously gave the dean 12.5. And then I can see what's encumbered. The encumbrances are under my control. So if these are my accounts, I can take my projections and I can enter manual encumbrances if I wanted to set aside that 10,000 travel. And so all of these should be correct, because what I failed to mention earlier when we were talking about benefits is that even if you go into MFin and let's say that your encumbrances are correct because they're paying the people that you want to pay, the percent that you want to pay until the end of that grant, and it's not going to change, you're still 3.144% short because it's not accounting for pooled fringe. And again, it's off because of the actual benefits versus the routing benefits. So these should be accurate if you've kept up your accounts. So if everybody is at the benefits rate that they should be, or at least very close to that, that benefits rate is going to include that 3.144%. And your expenses should always be accurate as of the last financial close. So when we all get that email that the finance office has closed January, then one of the two project managers will go ahead and upload the actuals from January. So if you check on February 1st, they are not going to have January. If you check on February 15th, January should be there unless both project managers got hit by a bus or the flu. The expenses should be completely accurate and match what's in MFIN, including any credits. Like if you did a PET and you got a credit for salary, then that PET, that actual credit will come over. So everything should be correct on expenses. And then this should be your true balance after encumbrances. So this is what the PI should be able to log in and see this column right here and say, wow, good thing I've got this 11.6 because I'm really overspending up here in this 342,000. I better start adjusting some payroll or do something because I'm gonna be in trouble with my sponsor. Obviously this gives the percentage remaining. So as I said, anything in blue you can drill down. So let's take this UM one and we're gonna drill down. All right, so there's two tabs here. So first of all, this header, you can always check this header just like you do when you are running your MFIN reports, and you can say, oh gosh, this has been extended to 2021. Keep in mind, that's not going to be updated by OGC in this system. So if you've got your, if you did your RPPR and you got another year, you need to go in here and go ahead and just update that. It's probably just best practice to do that when you get your update from OGC saying they've updated it in MFIN, then just go ahead and update it in here. It takes about 2 seconds. If you don't, what you're going to get is an error saying that you tried to budget somebody beyond the budget end date, and then you can correct it at that time. It's just probably good practice to update things in here as you get that from OGC. So again, we could actually drill down on any of this. It's probably not very good purpose at this point that we want to see this information. So the big thing to see here is we've got two tabs. The first tab is separate IDC, so that's indirect costs. So what this did is it subtotaled all of our direct costs, and then it breaks out our F&A lines, and we've got a subtotal for indirects. So if you're just breaking out directs versus indirects, this is the tab you want to look at. Again, this is my total budget. You can see that I have not encumbered F&A, so this would be a good place for me to go, wow, I didn't encumber F&A, I probably better fix that. Let's see, actual expenses and balance and remaining. So this really matches the first page, but just gives a little more detail. I can drill down on any of these pluses. What we've got is kind of a roll up. So same as in MFIN, you can roll up to level 4, 5, 6, depending on how detailed you want to see. So same with this, you can expand these and see what's within them. If you go in and play right now, the one thing I would say is a little wonky is the fringe benefits. I'm trying to get it to fix so that it rolls up to the right account, but there's a whole lot of fringe benefits rows, and so I'm trying to wrap my head around fixing those, but those will be fixed in the live system. And your fringe will actually fall in the right category. It's just the roll up looks a little out of order. So you can see here, for example, honoraria 495000 is the roll up account code, which includes study subjects. So I really don't actually even have anything in 495000. And so I wouldn't know that unless I had clicked on that, and I expanded and saw it's really 495102 study subjects for $30. If I then want to see what that $30 is, I can click on the roll-up account, and I can drill down, and it's going to take me to a reference number. These reference numbers are assigned when the information comes in from the MFIN import. So these don't really mean anything, but it allows you to link various transactions together. So they're more helpful if you're going to use cost centers, and they're more helpful on the budget side of things. So I'll show you that later. You probably aren't going to use them in expenses, but again, you can drill down. So I've drilled down, and it really did not, this particular line probably was a payment voucher, and so it's not actually showing me anything. That didn't. But if I back up and go into the travel one, I want to show you. So some stuff will come in with a lot more information, just based on how it is in MFIN. If I go into employee travel right here and I say $416, who was that or what did they do? I can click, again, I get the reference number, I can drill down, and it's telling me that this was Dr. Ghosh going to Philadelphia on March 22nd, 2019. That's in there because that was in MFIN. So it'll pull in here. He can go, oh yeah, that was Philadelphia or whatever. And that was in February or March. So, oops. So that is this report. Any questions on that particular piece? We're seeing something. Oh, I want to show you one other thing. So the salary breakdown. If I expand salaries, oh, sorry, that's the budget line. This is actually the salaries. So I'm working right now to get the budget line to actually be into the salary line, so that it actually rolls up to the same piece. Because it really doesn't help having a budget line in an account code that doesn't have actuals. However, if I drill down, I can see that the actual expense was these bottom two lines over here. And so if I want to see the details of that, I can click on this right here. And you can see that that amount is actually a roll up of several different transactions. The reason this all has the same accounting period, I believe, is because one of two things. Either one, it was all PETs, or two, that's the date that I actually pulled in the transactions. However, it should really pull in the date of the transaction, and I have seen that where it'll tell you January, February, March, April, May, and that will work. This particular one is a little wonky, but that will work. So it'll tell you which months this person was paid on there and how much they were paid in that month. You can do the same by budgets by fringe benefits and be able to see the details onto who that was. The other tab over here is group by group 3. It doesn't really make sense, but if you look in the back end, there's group 1, 2, 3, 4. And so this is essentially grouping by what they call group 3 on the back end. The difference here is that we've got personnel, so all of the personnel right here, and it's giving me a subtotal of personnel. And then I have non-personnel expenses, and it's giving me a subtotal of personnel and non-personnel, so my total directs, and then my indirects, and then my totals. So really, this is just breaking out the salary or the payroll piece, which is important for some accounts. I have some where the F&A is 25% on payroll and benefits only, on salary and benefits only. So that's a really easy way for me to go in and say, well, what's my subtotal of personnel? And then my F&A should be 25% of that, and it's a really easy calculation, rather than trying to back out all the other expenses and all of that. So those are just two ways of looking at the same thing. They still work exactly the same way as far as being able to drill down, being able to, click on and see more information and all of that. So when you're in here, like I said, you have control over your, sorry, let me go back to the main thing, your budgets. So I mentioned that, oops, just kidding. I mentioned that it's pretty ridiculous that right here I have a budget for $86,000 when really my pay is hitting down here. I do have a budget down here, but all of my pay is hitting down here. I'm never going to have an expense hit 40001, right? Because it's a budget category, nothing could ever hit there. So why do I have 86,852? Well, I might have left it there because on my budget it was going to be a TBN, or on my budget it was for Dr. So-and-so and they've left and we're trying to find the replacement or something like that. So maybe I'm just leaving it in there as a placeholder. But let's say I didn't, and that I actually get my grant and I really actually need that for PRA pay. What I can do is I can go in here and I'm going to choose this. You can see I've already been playing. I'm going to choose this $40,830 line. Really? I keep timing out. I apologize. right there. Okay. Going back into my budget. Nope, stop it. Going into there. Stop. It does not want me to change that line. Let me try this one. Just kidding. All right, it does work. Let's try a different one. All right, well, try a different speed type. And if that doesn't work, then I'm gonna say that they're working on the system and something's wonky. Come on. Okay, so I've gotten into this line where in 40001, I've got 67,995. I really know, I'm gonna hit the little edit button over there. It really does not want me to do this. Okay, what I should be able to do is hit the little edit button. It's gonna open that little box that you guys have probably seen several times in this demo. And I'm just gonna change the object code from 40001 to 400,500 if I want that for a PRA. I can move part of it. I can copy a row, so let's say, which is what I just tried to do. So let's say I only wanna move part of this. I wanna leave 27,000 in here and I wanna move 40,000 over for my PRA. I can do that. So keep in mind that nothing keeps you from not matching infant. So if you know that your total budget for this grant is 288,000 and you go change your budget and it says 388,000, nothing stops you. So that's something that you definitely want to check when you're playing around with your budgets. If you're moving budgets on that day, go back into those accounts and just double check that the budgets are what you started with, unless you're entering the line for future. You know you're getting another 50,000, but it's really not going to show up from OGC for another 6 months. You can go in and add that 50,000 into your budget. Just remember that when it actually hits from OGC, you need to delete that manual line that you did. So that's how you can adjust your budgets. You can do encumbrances the same way, and I'm assuming they're not working the same way right now, but you can manually go in and just enter an encumbrance line. I will see if it'll let me do that. All right, so let's say I wanted to hold out that travel. Easiest thing is to take a line that already exists and copy it. So I could take out, nope. To be working, all right. Okay, this one isn't an expense. You can manually enter expenses. I don't recommend that you do that because you want your actuals to be your actuals, but let's say I wanted to hold out 10,000. So I'm gonna enter it as an encumbrance and I'm gonna say for future travel per Dr. Ghosh, if I can spell. Okay, when I hit copy, there it is. I've got a 10,000 encumbrance in 700, 200. So if I go back out, you can see that I have encumbered $10,000 right there. If he comes back to me and says, turns out I need 15, I can just go back into that same line and just change the dollar amount to 15. I don't have to delete that line, enter a whole new thing, any of that. So that's how you can manually do an encumbrance. Let me go into projections for just a couple minutes and then we will be done. So from the financial homepage, or really any financial page, but I always like to refresh and kind of choose my module again. I can hit projections, really. Okay, it worked this morning. Try one more time. If not, I do have screenshots to show you. screenshots. Nope, wrong thing. Okay, so like I was trying to do, you hit this projection button. Let me do a, make this bigger. Okay, so you hit this projection button. It will open a screen that looks like this. It's a little messy because I've been putting some notes on it. You can see kind of my notes in the field here. But basically you narrow this however you want to. So you could enter just an employee. If you just want to run a projection based on that new PRA you just entered, you could just enter them right here. The only things required is a start date and an end date. So when you're doing a projection, you can't run for history because history has already happened, right? So all you can do is choose the future date. You don't have to choose the next date. If you're running a projection today, you don't have to choose February 1. If you know that you haven't even made any changes and all you want to see is what's going to happen next year, you could choose July 1. It doesn't hurt to reload February 1 if you've already loaded it and you haven't made any changes in that, then it won't change it. It'll basically put the same information in there again. I do recommend that you narrow it down at the very least by your personnel org unit. You can do by your whole org unit, so your H, whatever your H number is. Because if you don't narrow it down by your org unit, it's going to take everything. I'm not actually sure whether it's everything you have access to or everything that is in there for that time period, and it's going to reload it again. If you do a projection and you load it and it's got my people in there and then I was updating things or had updated things and hadn't loaded it, it can just be kind of messy. So at the very least, I just ask that you would at least narrow it down to your org unit. You can narrow it down just to a specific account. You can actually narrow it down just to a specific cost center. So you can narrow this as much as you want to. You can enter any fields. As I said, start and end date are required. Then you hit find. So the key thing here is we're going to constantly be saying find, calculate, load. Those are the steps in order to do a projection: find, calculate, load. So this is the find piece. You've entered your criteria and now you're going out to find those rows. That probably looks a little blurry, but these are your find results. So what came back was, based on the criteria I entered here, it came back with these rows. So if I'm doing this for my whole unit, I probably have several hundred rows maybe, because it's going to do, if a person is 50-50, it's going to have 2 rows for them. If you're doing multiple years and they're 50-50 on 3 different years, then it's going to have 6 rows for them. We know nobody is 100 and nobody is 50-50. Everybody is like 2 and 2 and 2, right? So everybody's going to have a bunch of rows because that's how we do things here, right? So you're probably going to have a ton of rows. I don't suggest at all that you're going to go through every line and say, oh, yep, that's the amount, that's the amount, that's the amount. That doesn't even make any sense. You're basically probably looking for some key things, and once you get used to looking at this, it won't seem so overwhelming. But basically the rate in the rate column right here is the amount that it's going to encumber for the speed type, very little over here, right here. It's going to put it in object code 400, 100, and all of these people, because it happens to be faculty that I've got in here. This is showing the actual salary. So if you wanted to do a quick calculation here, you could say on this first line, this person makes 100,000, and for the period of February through June, 11,141 is going to hit this speed type. I can do a quick calculation in my head and say, oh, that's exactly, you know, that's about the percent that I wanted it to be, or that's the dollar amount I wanted it to be. However, if I said, well, that's really interesting, but without going into the person and changing their funding distribution, I just want to see what happens if I change that to 20,000. What's going to happen to that particular grant? So I can do a test run right here, which I can't do now because I'm not on the system, but I could go into this right here, the little edit button, and I could just change. I'm not going to change the salary probably because she's probably going to make the same, but I'm going to go in and I'm going to change the rate to 20,000 for that period on that speed type and just see what happens. I could change every row in here if I wanted to. You might. You can add a record. So if you just say, I just set up a new account, I don't want to go in and mess with their funding distribution, but I just want to add a new row and find out what if Dr. So-and-so is paid on this new account that I just set up. You could add that and just continue to add rows. You could delete rows and say, I don't even want to run this scenario right now. So this is where you build your scenarios that you're trying to run. Keeping in mind that you probably want to do this monthly for your org as soon as the new actuals have been pulled in. So once we send out a thing saying January actuals have been pulled in, and don't actually do this for February, but you'll start getting emails saying January actuals have been pulled in, then you probably want to go here for your org unit and you want to run find, calculate, load for your actual encumbrances, because otherwise your encumbrance, it doesn't know when we pull in the actuals from January, it doesn't know to unencumber that for your personnel. So your encumbrances would still encumber January, even though January actuals are there. So that's totally up to you to make sure that your encumbrances are correct, because I can't know what you need to do and that you've changed any funding distributions, or if you wanted to try scenarios, I don't want to mess with your projections. So it's up to you to determine whether your encumbrances are correct and run your new projections. That's a very easy thing to do. You can just come in for your thing, say February through, you can run it through June 30th, 2035 if you want to, even if you don't have data out there, you can just set an end date forever. And then put in your org unit and find, calculate, load. It's as simple as that. So it could be a 5-minute process, especially once you kind of get the hang of it and start seeing this a lot. So then if you determine that this is pretty much what you want, you've entered any changes that you wanted to run some scenarios, then you're going to hit the, oh, no, I don't have screenshots for the rest. You're going to hit the calculate button, which is right here. So it's grayed out until you hit the find button. Then you'll get a calculate button. You'll hit calculate, and it'll give you a little green box up in the right-hand corner just for a few seconds, depending on how many entries you're doing. It'll give you a little green box saying calculating, and then when that green box disappears, it's done calculating. And then it will give you this load button, which is also grayed out right here. And that is what actually loads it into your accounts for encumbrances. So if all you wanted to do was find and calculate, and then make a change, and then find and calculate and make a change, you can do that all day long. You can find, calculate, load, go look at your account, say I'm still overspent, I need to back them down a little, come back in here, back them down a little, find, calculate, load, go check your account, say perfect, it's great, that's exactly where I want it. Now I've determined I want them at 5% instead of 7. I'm gonna go into their personnel record and change that to 5 so that it's official and I don't have to keep messing with it. And then you know what you're doing, and now you can go do your HCM entry. So you don't have to play with the percentages if you're not trying to make any changes, especially if you're trying to close out a grant. You might play around with this for a couple days, just trying to get your grant stuff ready to close out. Let's say it's closing out in 3 months. I just want to prepare for the end, make sure I'm on track, that kind of thing. It would be handy for if you're preparing to do your RPPR. A lot of times you have to guess, am I going to have more than 25% left over for carry forward? I don't know who's paid on there and what percent, what's that going to tally? You can just go do this through the end date. It doesn't always have to be June. Say my end date is August 31st. I find, calculate, load through August 31st. It looks like I have 25,000 left, but my grant is 250,000. It's only 10%. I can check no, and I don't have to explain why I have so much money left in my account. There is a report button right here after you load. You can hit report, this is actually where you'll get the report that shows month by month what those projections actually look like. There will be reports showing by person and ones showing by speed type. So you can run it any direction you're looking if you want to see how long a person can be funded or a group of people can be funded, or if you want to look at what your balance is going to be when you're ready to close a grant, or maybe what your teaching account is going to look like come June 30th. Whatever you've wanted to do as far as a projection. I think that is it. Let me just scan through here and make sure nothing. Yeah. One thing on when you hit the load button, you can go into options, and these are your options. Let's see. Yeah, so there's options for loading, and then it can either overwrite your previously loaded account encumbrances or it can delete them. I'm still playing around with it seems like those two are the same thing, except for, let's say that PRA Bob Smith was on an account and I no longer want to have him on that account. He left and is going to go work for another department. Then if I'm not encumbering him anymore and I've not deleted them, but I've only overwritten them, then I think his previous record would still stay. So I think deleting the previous encumbrances are the way to go. If anybody wants to go back today and test that out and let me know, that would be great. If not, that'll be something I'll figure out, and then I'll send that out in the step-by-step guides. So there's a few things I'm still working on to try to get some of the details, but I'm really trying to write a really detailed, comprehensive step-by-step guide, especially since we expect to have a lot of users. There should be more than one user in a unit. You may have heard before that we were paying per user, and actually we decided to go cloud-based, and so it is no longer user-based. We pay a flat amount regardless of whether we have one user or 100. So don't be afraid to say I need 5 people in my unit to have access. I want all my PIs to have access. I want my PRAs to be able to see 1 or 2 accounts. That's totally fine. But with turnover, PRAs and staff and that kind of stuff, I'm really trying to make it pretty intuitive and pretty easy to follow the step-by-steps. And the 2 project managers, myself and whoever the other person ends up being, will kind of be your help desk going forward. So I'm expecting to set up a new email account and potentially maybe a phone line that rings in both of our offices, wherever that other office may be, for you to be able to send things, questions and any troubleshooting and any of that kind of stuff. If on occasion we need to have kind of a one-on-one sit down or whatever, we can definitely do that. We do intend to have several training sessions that go a lot more into depth than this. I know this probably seemed fairly in depth, but for you to be able to bring in some of your actual stuff and be able to play with that and run scenarios and just get really familiar with the system. I think this is a huge benefit, and this is something that MFIN is, OGC may say that this is coming, but I've been here for 20 years and I've been hearing that for 20 years. And so if that comes, more power to them, and that'll be fantastic. I'm not banking on that. So I think that this is our best way of managing things outside of Excel, where there's room for typo errors and stuff in here too. But with Excel, I don't know about you guys, but me and my finance team, we're flipping back and forth between 100 spreadsheets on any given point and trying to figure that out. And then when a PI comes to us and says, hey, can I hire a PRA? And we're like, I have no idea. I need a week to figure that out. Even though we know every penny in the bank, and yet there's just so much to it that it's a little bit hard to guarantee. You don't want to offer somebody a job and then have to take it away in 3 months. So has that kind of spoken to people as far as, like, do people see how they might be able to use this? Do you have specific questions on what you think you may use it for and you're just not sure, it's not something I covered? I know I covered a really lot because I had an hour and a half and I talk fast.
Is there a specific or kind of a projected launch date for it to be live, and that's the environment people will be working in? Yeah,
so right now we're waiting for, so Cayuse is waiting for me to create a report for them tying job codes to benefit codes. That sounds super fun. I just haven't really had 2 minutes to put that together yet. I nominate Peter to do it. So as soon as I do that, which I told them would be yesterday, then they will do that upload for us. Then I've asked them to wipe the new system because we had been using the new system for probably 6 months. We were doing the uploads of the expenses while we were waiting for all these other pieces to come out. And I've said, you know what, we don't want to start with garbage and stuff that we don't know where it came from and where it ended and all of that. And so I've asked them to completely wipe it clean with the exception of the codes and the benefits rates and all of that kind of stuff. We want that in there. But I want all of history wiped and to start with a clean slate. And then They have promised that by the end of Q3, so by the end of March, they will have some of the specific pieces that I've asked for. I'm hoping this dollar to percent exchange and things like that. They're tweaking a few things on the projection side, and so I don't want to go full launch and say let's do this today. That's why I'm saying if you want to go play in the sandbox, that's fantastic. And if you have questions, you want to email me or call me or whatever while you're playing in the sandbox. I'm happy to do that. Just I don't want people to get frustrated right now and just go, this is too hard, but I also don't want people to say in a month, I totally forgot everything I learned when I went that morning and I sat there for an hour and a half and now I've totally lost it. So feel free to play as you have time, and then I am hoping within a month or two to have that clean slate, to be able to pull in historical information on the accounts that are active in the system right now, so that you all have some up-to-date information to work with, and you can just go in and adjust things as you want on your budget pieces and that kind of thing. Then I'll be working with me and the other project manager will be working with units to determine what you want to enter, if anything, on your Fund 10s and 20s, and we can talk about how to do like revenue imports. Well, I will be doing your revenue imports, but how you kind of want those to look, and if you want to do accounts receivable and that kind of thing. So the really long answer to your really simple question is I don't actually have like a perfect timeline. I will say in the next couple of months, play in the system, and just kind of get a feel for things. And I'm really hoping that by like April 1, I can have things really cleaned up and ready to give everybody their login and ID and all of that. I think there will continue to be training sessions in the meantime that'll be specific to pieces, and so we'll definitely relay that out. And if that particular piece isn't something that you'll be responsible for in your unit or that, then it'll all be, you know, as desired. You don't have to come to every training, but so yeah, I'm really trying to shoot for an April 1, because I'd really like to be using the system a little bit before we get to year end, so that we can use this first year end as kind of our pilot and see how year end is going to work. As you all know, with period 996 and 997 and 998 and 12 and all of that, I'm not exactly sure the perfect one to import, and so may just ask for a little grace on that, but we'll get that figured out. So I'd really like to do that, and then that way, July 1, 2020, we should have that figured out and really have a clean year going forward, and really start being able to depend on this and utilize this a lot more next year, next fiscal year.
When will each unit be charged for this?
So yeah, Christine and I actually just had a call with the Cayuse people, and what they said was, so we already paid the first $76,000 was our purchase price, and every unit has already contributed to that, so don't have a panic attack right now. We then collected enough money for $20,000 for the second year, so that has already been paid by every unit. Don't have a panic attack. And what they've done is they've given us one free year, because we had 1 year where they did not provide the software. They didn't provide what they promised. And so it's a little confusing. We're actually going to pay for the year we didn't get, but we're not going to pay for this next year. And so I believe that the next, sorry, I have this all in my notes. We owe them $20,000 come this April, but that is already in the Dean's Office bank. So it will be up to Christine as to when she collects the portion of the next year's $20,000, whether she wants to collect that in like this April. What I did mention to her is it might make sense to wait until like October when she does ICR distributions and just see whether people want kind of the in and out of their ICR or their tuition revenue or any of that kind of stuff that she does with year-end close, so that it's not trying to come up with this yet this fiscal year, but maybe do it next year, and then every like October, and then from October to April, it would basically sit in the account, and then we would pay Cayuse in April. So again, long answer is probably, my best guess is probably September or October is when we'll be looking to collect the next year payment, which will be for next year. I know it's a little complicated because our contract runs April to March, and ICR distributions come out September, October, and fiscal year runs July to June, and so we just wanted to make it as complicated as possible, as is the finance world. What else? Got negative 90 seconds. Thank you all. I hope you're excited and not freaked out by this. Please feel free to reach out to me. Email is the best. I'm really bad at answering the phone, so email is best, and I will do my best to stay on top of things and get back to you as soon as possible. And if you're super excited and you want to consider taking on being the other project manager, stay tuned, and that will be coming out shortly. Thank you.